This is the Three Skeevers podcast.
All right, episode 4 of the Three Skeevers podcast with Grim from Grimsforge Gaming and myself, Icy from Icyfire Gaming. How you doing, Grim?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. You know, they say that your parents are your number one fans, and I can actually say that's true because I spoke to them over this past week, and my mom and dad are both subscribed to our channels, and they actually listen to the podcast. So,
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad.
hello, mother, father. Glad you're listening. um, so this podcast, we're going to talk about the IC event that just finished up, and also the Cyrodiil changes and the patch notes for update 28. Would you like to start with your experience, Grim, with the IC event that just finished up?
I'd say the Imperial City event that we just did, for those of you that had participated in Mid-Year Mayhem, we've seen such a drastic change in functionality or responsiveness of the game just from Mid-Year Mayhem till now. And it just, whatever's going on in the game, it's not just relegated to PvP zones. Like there's lag in Craglorn, there's lag in the world, gap closers aren't working in open world, just like abilities aren't working, and it's just very frustrating. But anyways, there were times where you would deal with abilities not working and not being able to bar swap and 2-minute load screens and crashing, just all these things. I don't know. It wasn't enjoyable for me. So it was fun to go out with the guild that I was with and the people that I was with, but everyone was saying the exact same thing. Like, what are you doing with the game? Like right now, like gap closers are not working and you can't bar swap. And here you give us these brand new frost staff changes. So it's very frustrating. I don't know. That was my take on the event. What about you?
Well, I enjoyed the event in the beginning, running with Mighty Toxicity and Northhold, and I think it started on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think the first 3 days for me were pretty good, and to your point, a lot of the guys were complaining in terms of their gap closers not working, all that type of stuff.
Execute.
Executes, that was probably the most vocal complaint or observation from my end that I've heard people talk about. But for me, I did enjoy the event for the first couple days, but then after Sunday and the whole event, I think is about 2 weeks. It just kind of felt exhausting because we usually run run the sewers every day for the most part, and with the event going on and all of these Zerg groups running around constantly, it just kind of got a little bit frustrating. But I get it; it's the event. I think I would much rather it be a weekend thing where, say, it starts Friday 10 a.m., ends Monday 10 a.m., and it's just pure chaos for 4 days, and then we just go back to normal. But just having it for a 2 week thing it sounds awesome in theory, but it's just so much that you kind of lose steam after having all this excitement the first couple days, to the point where we were playing a different game completely. And I was having a lot of fun on Smite, I'll say it. And then I really didn't go in the sewers too much during the event until our guild run on Saturdays. We did that for a couple hours, and then same thing. Back on Smite the next day and waiting till the event's over till we can go back to just the normal routine. So
Yeah. And even when it's the normal routine, it's just us or just small group stuff and no one else is down there. Like
yeah,
one bar population, why are executes not working? Why are gap closers not working? Why are we not able to bar swap? And I'm no programmer. I don't know much about anything, but what I do know is that the game has drastically been regressing or falling apart. And so I talked to a couple programmers. I said, here's what I think. I think, I'm just guessing, that funds have not been allocated properly. And there used to be incremental updates or incremental changes or fixes to things even on a weekly basis. I remember a time when this was wrong. They fixed it. They were working on it the next weekend. You know, there was a 4-hour maintenance and they were fixing it. We don't have those anymore. And some people might say, well, COVID, like, how long has COVID been going on? And everybody's working from home, and that's their excuse that they're working from home. Like, you should have a system in place at this point to still, if 90% of the game's going to work, would it be acceptable that they only get 90% of their ESO membership? Like, no, like 90% of the game's working right now, and people are still paying 100% of their ESO Plus membership. And it's very frustrating. I canceled my ESO Plus membership. You know, I'd actually quit the game a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And the only reason I came back was to, you know, play with you guys. And there were people from the YouTube channel that, you know, were dropping into Discord and wanted to hang out and play. And so that's literally the only reason I came back, because I'm just extremely frustrated with this company. And anyways, I was talking to these code writers or these developers and stuff, and I said, here's what I think's going on. Every time something new comes out in the game, a new patch or a new, you know, Greymore, then Stonethorn, then whatever was before Greymore, like, these things are dropping, and we still, like, gap closers haven't been working properly that long, you know, 4 or 5 months. Executes, it's kind of gotten to a point now where it's happening to more and more people. Executes, like, across the board, aren't working regularly. Maybe 50%, not even 50% of the time. If we went and we asked 10 people, and so I asked these guys, like, here's what I think's happening. I think they keep pushing out new content, not addressing the old content. And one of the code writers, he had said this is not a code writer for ZOS or anybody like that. He's just a code writer in general. And he said, well, what you're describing sounds like regression testing. I don't know what regression testing is, and if you don't know what regression testing is, but let me read the definition so you at least know what it is. But regression testing is rerunning functional and non-functional tests to ensure that previously developed and tested software still performs after a change. If not, that would be called a regression. Changes that may require regression testing include bug fixes, software enhancements, and configurations changes, and even substitution of electronic components. And so what he was referring to was a new patch comes out, or a new class comes out, or new abilities come out, or new armor sets come out. And while we're testing the functionality of the new armor set, the new class, the new everything, to make sure it functions within itself, how does that code interact with all the pre-existing code? And so he said that sounds like part of the thing. And then also what you're describing sounds a little bit like software rot. And so I don't know what software rot is, or software erosion. And so let me read the description of that. But software rot, also known as bit rot or code rot, or software erosion, software decay, or software entropy, is either a slow deterioration of software quality over time, or its diminishing responsiveness that will eventually lead to software becoming faulty, unusable, or in need of upgrade. This is not a physical phenomenon. The software does not actually decay, but rather suffers from a lack of being responsive and updated with respect to the changing environment in which it resides. And so he said that's kind of what you're describing, is they have new patches and new things and new armor sets and new stuff coming out. But even the most simplest of things, like a gap closer that was implemented 5 years ago, has stopped responding or is not functioning properly or not working. And then he finally ended too with another thing, and he was talking about the reason for upgrades. And so I looked this up for myself to kind of get a better understanding of when and where and why would you need to upgrade your servers, right? Because that's the first thing on the tip of everyone's tongue right now. ZOS just needs to upgrade their servers. What exactly does that mean and why? And so I basically just did a search on why do you need to upgrade your servers. And I found this thing by Dell Technologies, which most of the points, there's like 5 points, most of the points may or may not have anything to do with this situation, but the one that did, I'll read it to you. Relative server performance declines over time as costs increase. On average, server performance erodes by 14% annually. By the 5th year, a server has only 40% of the performance it had when it was new. Lower performance and higher failure rates increase unplanned downtime by 20% annually. At the same time, higher maintenance costs require additional investment in aging systems. And so what I think is happening and why it's not even on the table right now, they're not saying, they're not even saying, let's upgrade the servers. They're either saying, look, you guys are going to take these global cooldowns or this Hail Mary that we're trying to figure out other ways to make this work, to hold it together. They're not even saying that it's time for a server upgrade and we're going to inconvenience everybody with a week of downtime or however it works. I don't know, but on average, server performance erodes by 14% annually. By the 5th year, a server has only 40% of the performance it had when it was new. We're in year 6 right now, going into year 7 on this game, and we're operating at 40 or 50% performance. That explains a lot. That explains a lot of what, between that I found, 40% performance. Yeah, I can totally see that. Regression testing, we're adding all this new stuff and we're not exactly sure how it's coinciding or affecting old stuff. I can see that. And then software rot, which is part of the other one. But so anyways, talking to a couple different people, this is kind of what I come to is, why are gap closers that have been in the game, certain gap closers or executes, why are they not working right now? Why is bar swapping not working? And why are these things? Well, it's because the servers themselves are operating at 40% capacity. And I don't think that they allocated the funding properly to make the jump to a better server. I think that they've been taking funding and putting it towards the next new shiny thing that they can get more funding on, more money coming in. They put the money towards the Crown Store and development of that. They put money towards the Stonethorn and Greymore and things like that, but they haven't put it towards actually making the game work. And so I'm extremely frustrated. I'm going off on a rant here, but I'm extremely frustrated when I see like Nephis. I like Nephis. You can find Nephis on YouTube, but Nephis, it's Nephis QS, okay, NEFASQS on YouTube, and he just did, a couple videos, and one of them says, "Don't panic," update 28 combat preview. And I'm extremely frustrated when these guys are proposing changes to Frost Staff and how we can make them more viable and how we can make them, what changes we could do to major and minor buffs, and hey, don't worry, but we're adding group queue back to Battlegrounds. I don't care about any of that. Fix your game. Make gap closers work. Make bar swapping work. Make potions work. Make streak not rubber band. Get rid of the crashing. Get rid of all this stuff that shouldn't be in here. Stop doing everything that you're doing and fix your game. Fix your game. And that's just the biggest frustrating thing about, are they even playing the game? Or do they just have a piece of paper laid out on the wall and they're like, this is how we're going to do, these are exactly everything that we're going to do this year. You know, this is what we're doing this year. We're going to go through and just blindly do these things and on to the next, because first quarter of next year, we got a next big thing coming out that even ESO Plus members have to pay for. And so I'm just very frustrated with this company. And that's why I started playing Smite, because Smite started the same year as ESO, and they're not having problems, performance problems and stuff like that. They're exactly where you should be year 6 or year 7 in. We're just working on balancing gods. We're working on balancing gear sets. We're adding or subtracting things that are working or not working. You know, we're not like, if I were to play Smite and I picked a god and the number 1 button didn't work on that god, like you couldn't use that ability, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And that's exactly what's happening in ESO right now. And I have like, the thing about it is this, all of this stuff I'm talking about, not being able to bar swap, not being able to execute, not being able to gap close, I notice this a lot. And I think a lot of other people are just now noticing it because, you know, then it clicks with them. They're like, oh yeah, you know what? Now that I think about it, maybe that's why I have to hit my gap closer 4 times. I thought it was just me. No, the thing's not working. You know, I'm dying in BGs because I can't bar swap to my back bar to heal. I literally am stuck on my front bar and I just run until I die. And it's just stupid. And you try and be positive and put out positive content and fun content with something that's broken and just not working right. And we're 6 or 7 years in. So that's my rant.
Hey guys, I'm still here. But do you think that the content that we put out, I guess the positive content, as much as we like the game, you think that's kind of artificially masking the problem? Should we just be putting content out that's talking about all of these issues until they actually do something? You think that would be the appropriate way to go about this? Or that would just be too negative, like, okay, all these guys do, they just talk about how bad the game is and all that stuff. Because ESO, it's such a big game where there's the PvP portion. Like within PvP, you have Cyrodiil, which is its own thing, Imperial City, Imperial Sewers, dueling, BGs. Those are 4 or 5 different areas that you can do within PvP. And then you also have the PvE portion, trials, dungeons, just regular RP, solo adventuring. Then you also have housing, just people who just want to do that. You also have guild traders who just want to do that, who don't even have to do any of the other things that I mentioned before. There's so many different aspects to the game that I feel like the part where we're having a lot of the issues on the PvP side, that yeah, we can say all the PvPers drop their subscriptions. Okay, great. We're not going to reward bad behavior anymore. You still got the whole PvE community that love the crafting bag so much that that's pretty much why the only reason why they still pay for it. I'm guilty of that. But they're still supporting ZOS with all that money. So at that point, could you make an argument maybe the PvE community is bigger than the PvP community, and then at that point they guess they don't really care so much about the PvP community? Because why would you have an IC event that just passed, and you know I'm speaking from like say August, releasing the Stonethorn, all these issues are come about. You're still gonna release the event with everything going about?
Yeah.
And I know people always say, do you guys even play the game? And they will emphatically respond, of course we play the game. And people will back them up. Yes, they play the game. What the hell are you doing? You don't see these. Every time a sorcerer streaks, whether it's in a PvP or PvE environment, they're going to rubber band. You don't have a comment about that or a response to that?
Do you not use gap closers? Do you not use executes? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane. And to that comment there, I know I don't whenever I play my support, but even just yesterday, I switched to my Stam DK and I was running Shields Assault. It was good for about 5 minutes, and then I went into the next district, couldn't gap close at all. And that was probably my first true experience of getting a taste of my gap closer not working, and it sucked. For the entire time while I was in Memorial District, I could not gap close. And I thought to myself, I get it now when everyone's complaining about it, and I don't want to play this. This sucks.
Yeah.
One of my abilities that is part of my kit, the whole thing I built around, relies on that ability, can't use anymore. Done deal. It's over.
Yeah. And here's the thing, though. PvE community absolutely is bigger than the PvP community. It is. Like, I don't know the exact numbers. I just truly
Would you say 70-30 or 60-40?
probably, and then the line is grayed because how many are PvEers but casual PvPers just to get their transmute crystals, or you know what I mean? So there's that. But the biggest fear about these AoE testing and AoE proposed changes is they've got 4 possibilities. Okay, let's say in their mind they're going to go with one of those possibilities. Do you think that they're only going to relegate that to PvP zones? No, because there's lag in Craglorn, there's lag in Rothgar, you can't use abilities in those places too, and so these proposed changes that they're hoping for will eventually make their way into PvE as well. And I can't imagine that they're going to want a game that has 2 separate rules for PvE and PvP. Like, we already have this line in the sand where PvE is very crit based, and PvP is less built around crit, and it's because of the way the damage works, sustained damage versus burst damage and yada yada. But I don't think that they implement one of these 4 changes from the AoE testing and it not apply to both PvE and PvP, because the level of confusion for anyone that as a developer, or a person, if you own this game, would you not want PvEers to experience PvP in this game to see what it's about? Are you going to have a completely separate set of rules where you have global cooldowns that exist in PvP world and not in PvE? And Johnny has his rotation down awesome and he really likes PvE and he's going to start exploring PvP, and then what the heck is this? A global cooldowns? Like, I just don't. It's so strange to be 6 or 7 years in and this is what they're discussing right now. It gives me a complete lack of faith in the discussions. There's been a handful of other things too that have kind of led me to that point where a week ago or 2 weeks ago that I'd quit the game. Obviously, I'm back and I'm making content and hanging out with people, but I don't have to like it. Like, I like hanging out with them, but I'm very frustrated with the state of the game, and it's just extremely frustrating. It's very, very frustrating, the immense opportunity that they have or have had. I feel like it's a bait and switch to be 6 years in, and they built this whole thing, play the way you want, put on whatever weapon you want and you can be exactly who you want. And year 6 or year 7, they're like, well, time to add global cooldowns. That's the answer. Like, that's not the answer. There's other answers, and they need to explore those. Adding global cooldowns isn't going to fix my gap closer, is it? It's not going to fix my ability to bar swap. It's not going to fix executes. So I just don't. Now all of a sudden my execute works because they changed frost staffs. That's great. So
yeah, it's a bit crazy how, even though, from me being on the support side of I from using all my abilities, I don't experience all the things that you guys do because I don't run gap closers, I don't run executes, but it's so interesting and bizarre to me that because I hear a lot of people complain all across the board, and despite all those complaints, we all come back every single day to log in, run it down mid to Molag Bal or the districts, whatever, and we still play it. And I feel it sounds or seems like Zos is kind of taking advantage of that because
Yeah.
on one side we don't have to come back, but we do, and we still log in and we still give them the numbers for whatever KPIs they're trying to reach.
Yeah.
I
Because
don't.
when it's working, when it does work, it's glorious, right?
Oh yeah, but then it's quickly it's quickly shot down when you're trying to do something and it doesn't work, and now you remember why you stopped playing or why you logged off early the other day.
Yeah.
So
I'm so glad that we got these two guys to within a sliver of their health and we can't execute them. Yet their executes work.
yeah,
Congratulations. And it's very frustrating. We're trying to get transmute crystals right now. We go out to Cyrodiil where the tests are going on, and it is just an absolute shit show. It's terrible.
and I remember thinking back in when was the first announcement that these Cyrodiil changes were happening? Like June or July?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And I thought, this actually might be a good idea. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because I think it might actually have an improvement on everything. And I was quickly proven wrong. And when I think it was you and Papa the other day,
Yeah.
you guys went to farm some transmute crystals. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to miss out and all this stuff, whatever. It wasn't even 10 minutes when all of a sudden you guys were just not having it with all of the horrible performance issues. Everything was going wrong, and you could barely play the game. And you were only there for about 5-6 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't there hardly any amount of time. And even with the double AP, not worth it. Not worth the level of frustration, not worth trying to play a broken classes, not worth trying to play classes that aren't necessarily broken, that just aren't working. Gap closers and executes and Papa died on a resource and couldn't use any abilities. He's like, I'm gonna freaking die and I can't do nothing. I can't use any abilities, and it's just what's wrong with your game when that's a thing. So I don't know. I worry about, they need to prove to me that they know what they're doing coding wise. Like, stop what you're doing, fix gap closers that are already in the game. Stop what you're doing, fix executes that are already in the game. Simple as that. Show me that you know what you're doing. You can do what you say you can do. You're selling this product to people, and it's not even a fully functioning product. That it's just mind-boggling. And I think you hit the nail on the head. There's so many people are creatures of habit, and I know this from the gym industry. The hardest part of gyms and training is getting the person to step through the doors, to actually come to your facility. And then once they come through the door at the facility and they kind of get past this intimidation factor and they get past the sedentary lifestyle to let's get active, let's get motivated, let's do something.
Mm-hmm.
When they come through the door, it's easier to get them to come back. It starts to feel a little bit more like home. It starts to become a habit for them. And so I know this to be true. Like, so I don't watch TV. I'll watch series like Mandalorian. I'll watch series on television from time to time, but I don't watch TV. My habit is, if I'm not training people, I'm not working with clients, I'm not consulting, the way I like to relax is I play video games. And I've played ESO since beta, took some time off, went to Smite. That's how I know about Smite, and got some diamond level characters in Smite. And then I came back to ESO But that's what I do. I'm a creature of habit, and I enjoy PvP in games, the competitiveness. So I do think that they've taken advantage of that. They're offering us a unfinished product right now, and I think everybody's voice needs to be loud and clear. Fix your game right now. What you have right now, fix it. Don't throw any new changes at us. We're going to change majors and minors and frost staff, and but don't worry, after Stonethorn we got the forge, Blood Forge is coming, or whatever the next thing around the corner is. Don't throw anything new at us. Fix what you got.
Sounds like a great idea, but I think we both know whenever this update 28 comes through, there's still going to be rubber banding. You're still not going to be able to execute. All these things are still going to be problematic.
Right.
I could almost guarantee you that we're still going to have the issues that we're having now.
What?
If
Absolutely.
anything, it's going to be worse because
Yeah.
they're just compounding.
Yes, that right there. Who's to say that the frost staff changes aren't bugged or don't work properly? And a lot of people will say, well, that's why you go onto the PTS. There's just not a lot of people going to into the PTS servers to do stress testing or anything like that. It's content creators going to figure out what the next best sets are going to be and how they function and things like that. So, yeah. So instead, what they're doing is live testing, right? Like
Yeah.
we're gonna do these 4 different scenarios in Imperial City or Cyrodiil, and we're gonna offer you double AP to go there and subject yourself to it.
Which I guess is probably not the best idea, but if it's their way to get some sort of testing done, since not a lot of people are going to PTS, or maybe come up with another way to incentivize people to go to the PTS. I'm not sure what that would be.
I don't know. You could probably offer transmute crystals or unique mounts or unique things, to it's a considerable download, to have the PTS server.
Is it at least half of what the ESO live version is?
It's probably more than that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but not to rain on everybody's parade today that's listening. It's just voicing the frustrations with the current state of the game and what's going on. I don't understand why you're doing these testing. You've got we know that there's problems with the game and the bar swapping and the gap closing and the executing and the everything else and clipping through walls and all this crazy stuff. We know this, and abilities not working, like cloak, stealth, shadowy disguise was not working, and you immediately pop out, and just all these weird things. But we're going to do an Imperial City event, so everybody can come out and celebrate what, like
Why we love the game, no matter how bad it's performing.
that right there. I don't understand it at all. It's terrible. Like, when your house is a mess, you don't invite people over to it, right?
Yeah, you
Like,
clean it up, you make it presentable.
that's right. You don't invite people over to your house when it's a mess. You clean it up, you make it presentable, and then you invite people over so they can witness you in all your glory, And so I don't understand why they did this Imperial City event with these problems unless they were not known problems to them, which falls back to the whole thing that they don't even play their own game. Because if they played their own game, they'd know that there's rubber banding and gap closers aren't working and bar swapping isn't working and all these stupid things. They would know that. They wouldn't just rely on what people are talking about in the forums.
Right. I think I'd be all right with, because I've seen this in other games. Well, there, say League of Legends, if there's some sort of crazy bug going on with this particular champion, they will remove that champion until
Yeah.
that bug gets fixed from either the regular main client or just the professional LCS stuff that they do. But if streak or certain gap closes are all busted, I guess I'd be alright if they somehow disabled gap closing for that ability, which would change the game drastically. But if they took it out and then they were working on it for a day or two, hey, I could take a break from PvP and work on some other things. Not a big deal. I don't really necessarily need gap closers in PvE when I run dungeons or whatever. I'd be fine with that, but just fix it.
Fix it.
I would rather have 24, 48 hours of no gap closing in order for you to fix it than the situation that we're in now where it's been, what, a solid month with these issues happening and they released an event and everything. I don't know. Oh boy.
They're on the clock. You've got games coming out, and even if it's not a year from now, it doesn't come out. But New World's coming out. There's other, Ashes of Creation. Who knows what's going on with that? And maybe that's 2 years from now. But
even games that are already out now that work.
Yeah, games that are already out now that work. And the thing about it, let's say New World is a year from now. Like it just did its beta testing and people are jumping over to it. ESO content creators are jumping over to New World. ESO content creators like Dots are going to World of Warcraft. Like they're on a timer here. ZOS is, and ESO is on a timer here, because even though that game might be a year from now, if they keep regressing or they keep not fixing their game and shoving new content down your throat, by the time that game comes out, everybody is going to be ready to jump. And that's the frustrating part, is that I like this game a lot. When it works, great. I love this game. We just don't get it to work often. And so that's a problem. When it does work, it's great though. And so they're on a timer. And I want to see how they handle. When I saw these update 28 or whatever, I'm listening to Nephis talk about it. It was just pissing me off.
Jesus.
You're going to give me frost staff changes. You're going to give me major and minor buff changes. But don't worry, everybody. Group BGs are back. That's stupid. That's stupid when you've got so many problems with the game.
What is it? What do magicians call it? Sleight of hand. We're gonna show you something shiny over here, so maybe you'll forget of all the existing problems that are going on now.
That's
because
exactly right.
I can almost guarantee you, group BGs are going to be great, but now instead of us complaining individually that this sorcerer is streaking or rubber banding like crazy, now we can complain together as a group, because if we're together, friendship will always prevail, and who cares at that point, because we're playing with our friends.
Right. And what a silly, that's another, when we talk about all these different weird decisions that don't give me faith in the company. I'm not normally this negative, by the way. It's just my immense frustration with this company. But what a silly thing. This is an MMO, a massive multiplayer online extravaganza, and we're going to get rid of group queues for Battlegrounds.
LOL.
You gotta play solo in a multiplayer online game. Like, that's just who. I understand that people were complaining about their go-to should not have been, let's get rid of group queues. Their go-to should have been, well, we'll add a solo queue and we'll add a group queue. Done. That should have been their go-to from the beginning, and now that's what they're going to now. After some testing or whatever. And I understand that there were people saying, well, we can't win BGs because we're always going up against pre-mades, and these pre-mades are so good or whatever. Part of that comes down to the MMR situation, which is this gray area that isn't explained very well. And it's just the MMR matchmaker rating system if you can find out exactly how the matchmaker rating system works for ESO, please share it. Share that link in the descriptions below or in the comments below, because it's such a gray area. But how's it going to work? That's another frustrating thing, was they talk about, don't worry, group Q's coming back. Well, I need you to explain to me exactly what that looks like. If Grim Hollow, by the way, who's going to be on our next episode, uh, but Grim Hollow is in our group, and we're a bunch of new PvPers, you know, what's that do to our MMR as a team? How are we matched up with other teams? Or is it just a grab bag? Whoever gets matched up against whoever, at least let us know. If you're going to party up, you could be facing any level group of MMR team, like they need to spell that out, exactly what it looks like. And how do you raise your MMR? I can tell you this, I get this all the time. I'm doing battlegrounds, I'm doing build testing. I'm testing all the various builds and how they function, and I'm doing kind of stress tests on the build. Like I play overly aggressive, fight it down to zero, I'm fighting down to 0 resources, and then see how well I can bounce back from it with this particular type build. And how does these ultimates hang in different scenarios and stuff like that. I get it all the time. People are like, well, this isn't impressive because, he's 810 and look at the people he's killing, and they're all low MMR. I don't know how the system currently works right now, but I can tell you this, because I don't spend any amount of time on one specific character, and I'm making gear for somebody, testing gear for somebody, and then releasing a build and then moving to the next. So that way I have content coming out and different builds and different classes for people to try. My MMR, when I come back to that person and that class, hasn't raised. It's still the same. And I'm still fighting CP 128 and CP 88 and things like that. And it's not me. It's their system that they have in place. Should the MMR be more, should it be a calculation of their total hours played and their total hours played on that character or that class? Should it be something there? I don't know, but they need to talk about that. And
I think it from watching your BGs and stuff, between say professional versus Thanos. Professional's been here for years. Thanos was just created yesterday.
right,
And it almost sounds like it's character based.
right.
So for your example, you make new characters almost every month. So when you're doing these test builds on these new guys, you're always going to be with fresh new MMR going against whoever's at that level.
Right. And then it becomes, all of the acquired skill or experience just playing doing PvP in general versus newer players that they just stepped into their first couple battlegrounds,
Right.
And so I don't think that's fair, but that's just the way it is, and I would understand it would make it very hard for me to create content, putting out new builds and always having to be in the highest MMR. So I'm not going to complain too hard, but they at least need to spell it out for everybody so it's very clear exactly how MMR works and how that is going to work with grouping. Is it going to be the average of the highest and lowest in the group? Is it going to be the average of everyone involved? Is it going to be the highest person? And, if whatever my MMR rank, if I'm just through the roof, like everyone that's in my group is going to be ranked accordingly. Is it going to be whoever the group leader is? And then you'll have the 88 CP person putting the group together, so that way, you and I can be in the group with them when we're just, smashing. And so, but they still need to spell it out. and not worry about people finding a way to exploit it. Just spell it out. And so that's, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, since we've been playing Smite for the last several weeks, maybe they could do it like that, where MMR is based on your count, total games played or whatever, however they calculate it. But then how Smite does it, where, yeah, my MMR is what it is for my account, but each god that I play has a rank next to it. So if I have a rank 10 Aphrodite or Nox, you can tell, okay, this guy's been around the block. He knows the character pretty well because he's played that many games, which are quite a lot, to get to that level. I think something like that, where, okay, this guy, we'll just say Grimalo, he goes in there, his MMR is whatever it is, but he's got a max 10 Nightblade.
Yeah, he's a diamond ranked Nightblade.
He's a diamond ranked Nightblade. Okay, this guy,
10-star diamond ranked Nightblade, you know?
Right, and that would tell you very quickly, okay, this guy knows how to play that class. But then, say you create Thanos, and you bring him in, okay, well, we know Grim has a high MMR, but his ranking with this class for this guy is a level 1, because you just created it yesterday. I think something like that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
To help give people indicators of, okay, this guy's got experience, this guy not so much. Whatever.
Yeah. And what level of confidence do you have that they would implement that system? It makes sense. What level of confidence do you have that they would do that when we just got group BGs back, or we're getting it back?
Right.
You know, like, I feel like that's just light years from where they're at right now. And I don't know.
But before we even get there, just fix the game, bro.
Oh yeah, I want group BGs to be back. I want group BGs to be back, but if they had to stop everything that we just read in update 28 and just fix the game, I'd take that. You know?
Right.
Another weird thing too is this. So Greymore was, you look at the trailer and it's like this, you know, vampire apocalypse. It's the coming of vampire, and vampires getting a rework. And when I look at that, this is exactly what I just envisioned from that whole situation with Greymore. They had a team for vampire people, you know, they had a group of people that were working on vampires. We want to make vampire a playable, basically, subclass or class, okay? And then they were like, but if we just focus on vampire, there's going to be so many people that complain that werewolf doesn't get the same love, because we know that there's a problem with werewolf right now. The buffs are falling off once you're in werewolf form, and in turn making you weaker as a werewolf, right? And so they put a team together, Team Vampire, and they put a team together, Team Werewolf, and they said, okay, we want you to come up with ideas to make werewolves and vampires great again. Make them something to truly be feared on the battlefield. Come back to us in a month or whatever, you know, however long. Team Werewolf comes to the table with all their changes. Team Vampire comes to the table with all their changes, and the person that's running the meeting says, okay, Team Vampire, let's hear what you got. And so the person stands up and they've got their board behind them. They're like, okay, here's what we propose. We want cost increases across the board for every regular ability. All right. And you take more fire damage. Okay. How cool does that sound? And then here's the abilities, which ended up not being, a lot of the abilities are not abilities that you could build a class around, right? Like, you wouldn't fill your whole bar with vampire abilities for the most part. They're just not that good. And then some of the abilities are also animations that were taken that were already in the game. So it was like minimal effort to make this ability that nobody's going to use anyways, you know? So they come to the table with all these crazy cost increases for any ability outside vampire. They have all these abilities that, for the most part, people aren't viable to use, but you get a cost decrease if you use them, you know. And then there was some complaining about the vampire ult being very similar to the necro, you know, Colossus or Bone Giant, you know.
Yeah, the Goliath. Yeah.
The Goliath, the Bone Goliath, like animation being somewhat similar and things like that. The vampire ult, when you're going into it and coming out of it, you are rooted and you can't.
You CC yourself.
You CC yourself when you're transforming. And so they go through this whole proposal about increasing flame damage and regular ability costs and stuff like that. And the guy's like, interesting. Okay. And then he looks over at Team Werewolf and he says, what do you guys got? And they're like, well, we want to make some minor tweaks to the different abilities, but basically any passives that you might be missing going into Werewolf, we just want to make sure you have access to those. And so we're going to attach this passive to this. We don't want you to lose major brutality or major sorcery while you're in Werewolf. We're going to attach it to this. And they just went through and systematically fixed the shortcomings of Werewolf. And now everybody's like, werewolves are broken. Werewolves are probably working exactly as they should have in day one if you're going to be in this ultimate, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that that's so interesting, and it makes me lack faith in the company.
Right.
When decisions like that, and it went live. The vampire changes, they came back off of some of the changes, you know, like the regular ability costs or the flame damage, but there's very few reasons in the game right now to be a level 4 vampire. Like, you're literally hurting yourself doing it.
Right.
You're hurting yourself doing it. So and this was supposed to be the vampire, you know. I don't care either way, by the way. I'm not pro vampire or pro werewolf. I'm just pro have fun, you know? So,
yeah.
and right now, werewolf's way more fun than vampire.
Especially since you can't bar swap. Might as well play something that doesn't require you to swap at all.
If you're going to be stuck on one bar, you might as well be a werewolf and then just hope your gap closer and your heal work, you know? Yeah, that I've literally said that. We've been run into a group. I die because I can't bar swap or can't gap close or can't execute. And it's just the dumbest thing ever. And I'm like, okay, I'm switching to my werewolf. Like, you know?
Yeah, the game shouldn't be in a position where you have to do that. You have to play only a werewolf just to have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very frustrating, but
and also that's just you trying to adapt to the situation because you still want to play the game, you still want to have fun with your friends, but now in order for you to do that, you have to play a class that is unique in its own way just to get through the game in the poor condition that it's in. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So it's just been very frustrating, you know. Normally, I look forward to the Imperial City events because for me, I feel like it's home, and it's going to be an opportunity to have people come to our home and experience it. And maybe they like it, you know. They come to Imperial City and they're like, you know what, this isn't half bad. But people were coming there and they're like, you know, testing's going on in Cyrodiil, and they come to Imperial City and gap closers executes and all this stuff isn't working or whatever, and PvPers are like, there's nowhere safe to go.
Yeah.
So
Oh boy. You think it's a good idea for me to share my vampire idea, or should I save it for a future date?
vampire, yeah, let's hear it. I've got about 12 minutes before I have to head to a training session.
Okay, so my vampire idea was kind of how the werewolf passive, when you have a group of werewolves, you get, I think, what is it? Ultimate, or your werewolf duration cost is reduced so you can stay in the werewolf longer. Kind of make it similar to that with the vampire, but make it based on, I think in a lot of vampire movies, like Twilight or Underworld, it's family oriented, and it kind of matters who actually turned you into a vampire.
Coven,
So
right?
a coven. So for example, if Grim turns me into a vampire and we're in the same group, we now have some passive, call it the coven, I don't know, make it up. And when you're in a when two vampires, part of the same family, are in a group, give them some benefit where it's, say, the whole vampire tree is increase your costs. Well, when you're hunting with your family, why don't you reduce the you get the benefits of a stage 4 if you're in stage 4, but now the costs are reduced to a stage 3. But guess what? Now we have another person that you turned in the group, and also it's lineage wise. So if Grim turns me into a vampire and then I turn somebody else into a vampire, and now that person, now we have like a grandpa, the father, and the son. That's all part of the same bloodline. Now the three of us were all stage 4 vampires, but now because there's three of us in the group, we only get the costs of stage 2. And again, do this again for add another vampire that's part of our bloodline. It'll same way with the werewolves. It'll just cap at 4 people. So if we have more people in our group that are part of our family but go past 4, so 5, 6, 7, we all get the benefits up to the 4 mark. So now you have a bunch of stage 4 vampires running around with the cost with the negative cost of a stage 1 because we're a family. Now if you have your family but then you bring in some other vampire that's not part of your an outside vampire that's not part of your family, he doesn't benefit from the cost, and neither do you. So
Yeah.
it actually matters who turns you in this scenario. I think that would be kind of cool, and also, playing on that whole thing. I'm not sure what the whole relationship is ESO lore wise with werewolves and vampires, but just taking it from, again, Underworld or Twilight, whatever, how it's always vampires versus werewolves. If you bring a werewolf into your group, they kind of cancel the passives out, and it'll say something like, "You smell the stench of a werewolf is in your presence." So you're not going to benefit from your passives. So you can't just have a vampire and a werewolf in the same group together because they're going to contradict each other. But something like that, I thought it would be cool to
Yeah.
help bring some liveliness to the vampires, because the if werewolves, they're hunting in their pack, are stronger together, why don't we kind of do the same with the vampires
They're with
if
their coven.
if they're with their coven?
Yeah.
So I thought
I
it was a
love
cool
that
idea.
idea. I also think I don't know what the lore for ESO vampire versus werewolf,
If
so
that's even a thing.
if it is even a thing, but if you watch Underworld and you watch movies like that, werewolves at one point were slaves to vampires, or they were guardians to vampires. While the vampires slept during the day, the werewolves would protect them and keep them concealed or keep them safe. And then something happened where they rebelled. And then Underworld has its own other story. But what if how many vampires do you see right now in the game? Like people running around as a blood scion.
1 out of every 50 or something. It's a very small percentage.
Super small percentage, right? And it's because how many werewolves do you see right now?
Oh, rampant. Bunch of
They're
strays everywhere.
There's strays everywhere spreading rabies and stuff. And so I think that maybe they should follow a little bit of that vampire versus werewolf. I think whenever a werewolf and vampire are fighting, the werewolf should get a debuff, even if it's minor fracture or whatever, and it should be a debuff called subservient, and
I like that a lot.
werewolves are always at a disadvantage when fighting a vampire. If you want more people to play as a vampire, give them things that make them feel more powerful in that regard. You have a werewolf that if the practitioner or the user of the werewolf knows how to, they can stay in werewolf form indefinitely. Granted, you only have access to one action bar, but that one action bar has everything you need, from defiles to gap closers to burst heals to debuffs to stuns. It has everything they need in their kit, right?
Right.
Vampires have an ultimate that you can go into this rampaging Scion Lord, but you can have access to all your other vampire or all the other abilities in the game. So maybe you can't stay in that Scion form forever, but they need to figure something out that makes vampire an absolutely terrifying thing. Because right now, if I'm running around in Imperial City by myself and I see a werewolf, I would prefer not to fight them than fight them, unless I'm on my Witcher or somebody that has a lot of disease or poison damage. And then it's like, let's go, pooch. But I think vampires need something, and I think that's a really cool subservient. Could you imagine if it were a stacking debuff? Like if you got
if you have your coven with you.
If you got your coven with you, that freaking werewolf is dead.
Yeah.
Like minor fracture times 4.
Yeah, we'll say up to 4, just so it doesn't get ridiculous if you got like 10, 20 stacks of minor fracture on.
Right. So.
And would the werewolf need to be transformed into the werewolf, or just have the blood of a werewolf inside of him?
The werewolf gets plus 15% to stamina with the werewolf on its ultimate bar. It should also get debuffs while in human form.
Yeah, yeah, okay. If you're gonna have the benefits of it, even if you're in human form, you should, kind of like when people steal Superman's powers, or they take his blood and use it for whatever. Did you think you weren't gonna get the weaknesses, the kryptonite?
Right.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Get all the benefit and all the positives and none of the negatives. No.
Right. Cool. So I think we can wrap this up. Any last words or anything for next week?
So I'm interested to hear what everybody has to say about not trying to be negative with this episode, just trying to be real. Okay. And if you're
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. If you're having problems with gap closers, you're having problems with bar swapping, you're having problems with these things, I'd like to hear about it in the descriptions below. By chance, I was told by a friend, Dan. Dan has a YouTube channel as well, and Dan said, Zoss had seen my YouTube channel as small as it was, and he said, I have no doubt that they're gonna see, they're definitely gonna see your podcast for sure. If that's the case, I would like them to see the voice of what's happening and what people are experiencing in Imperial City and Cyrodiil right now. Talk about what your experiences are in PvP. And then I want you to be cognitive of the fact that whatever changes they decide to go with in the AoE changes, at some point are going to carry over to PvE world. So if you're a PvEer and you think that this is funny, what's happening in the game, the joke is on you. This is actually going to affect you at some point. There's no way around it. It will. And so I want you, if you're a PvEer, I want to hear what your thoughts are about this. If you had to operate with these global cooldowns and play with it, and there might be some people that'll say it's whatever, but so I want to hear what everybody's what they're running into and what their experiences are. And then if you have an idea for next week's episode, we've got Grim Hollow next week, and I've got a funny announcement that I'll do separately for that, letting everybody know. But
is that a official confirmation?
Last he and I spoke, he said he'd be good, and we can record on Wednesday or whatever day we need to. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah, and he said he's game to talk about whatever content we want to talk about. It could be the AoE changes, update 28 here. It could be about just Nightblade, its class, and kind of what he's seeing in trends and things like that. So he's game for whatever.
Yeah, and I guess for the people listening, if you have any questions you would like us to ask Grim Hollow, please comment below.
Yeah, that's all we got. Thanks.
Awesome. And thanks for listening, guys. Have a good night. See ya.
You're going to say bye-bye, Argonians.
Bye-bye, Argonian.